I need to tell someone about this, and I've decided it's going to be you. Not because I think you can help me. I'm past that. I'm telling you because if something happens to me, I need there to be a record. I need anyone, to understand why I stopped answering my phone, why I changed my number 3 times in 4 weeks, and why none of it mattered. It started on a Tuesday, March 14th. I remember the date because it was my friend Corinne's birthday, and I'd forgotten to text her. I was pulling a double at the dispatch center where I work, Meridian County 911, down in southern Georgia. If you've never worked emergency dispatch, let me paint you a picture. It's a windowless room about the size of a classroom, lit by fluorescent tubes and the pale glow of 6 computer monitors. You wear a headset. You sit in a swivel chair that's been adjusted by 100 different bodies over the years and no longer adjusts properly for any of them. And you answer calls. Car accidents. Domestic disputes. Medical emergencies. Prank calls from kids who think it's funny. The occasional silence on the line that makes the hair on your neck stand up because you know someone is there, breathing, needing help, unable to speak. I'd been doing this for 3 years. I was good at it. I want you to know that. I wasn't some anxious wreck who heard things in the dark. I was trained to stay calm when a mother is screaming that her toddler isn't breathing, to give CPR instructions in a steady voice while internally my stomach is folding in on itself. I dealt in crisis as a profession. I could separate the real from the imagined. That's what makes this so hard. Because I know what I experienced, and I know it was real, and I also know it shouldn't have been possible. My shift that Tuesday ran from 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. 16 hours. By the end of it my voice was hoarse and my eyes felt like they'd been rolled in sand. The last call of my shift was a welfare check request. A woman in Valdosta said her elderly neighbor's porch light had been on for 3 days straight and she hadn't seen him leave the house. Routine. I dispatched a unit and logged it. Then I pulled off my headset, grabbed my bag from the break room, said goodnight to Marcus, who was taking the overnight, and walked out into the parking lot. March in South Georgia is mild. Mid-60s at night, the air thick with the smell of pine and something faintly sweet, like the ghost of the peach orchards a county over. I sat in my car for a minute before starting it, the way you do when you're bone-tired and your body needs a moment to shift modes. That's when I pulled out my phone and saw I'd missed Corinne's birthday. I opened my messages to text her. And that's when I saw it. There was a message thread I didn't recognize. Not a new contact. It was listed under my own number. My exact number. I knew it the way you know your own reflection. Area code, prefix, the 4 digits I'd had since I was 17 and my dad added me to his plan. My number, texting me. The message had come in at 3:47 p.m., right in the dead middle of my shift when I wouldn't have been checking my personal phone. It said, "Don't open any message that comes from this number after midnight. Not tonight. Not any night. Delete this one now." ****, I stared at it. Then I actually laughed, this short, dry sound that surprised me. My first thought was spoofing. I knew about number spoofing. We'd had a briefing at work about scam callers using local numbers to increase pickup rates. Someone had probably spoofed my own number to send me spam, and they dressed it up in creepy language to make me curious enough to click a link. Except there was no link. No attachment. Just text. My second thought was that it was one of my co-workers messing with me. Darren, specifically. Darren loved pulling stupid pranks. He'd once changed everyone's hold music to a recording of a rooster crowing. He had exactly the kind of juvenile humor that would find sending someone a message from their own number hilarious. I screenshot it and texted Darren. Real funny. How'd you spoof my number? ***, he replied almost immediately. What are you talking about? I sent him the screenshot. A minute passed. Then, that's weird. Wasn't me though. Maybe someone's messing with you. Just block the number ***. Block my own number. I wasn't even sure that was possible, and I wasn't going to test it at 10:30 at night in a parking lot when all I wanted was my bed. I deleted the message, exactly as it had told me to, though not because it told me to. I deleted it because it was junk, and I treat my message threads like my workspace, clean and organized. I drove home. I lived alone in a rented house on Callaway Street, a quiet residential road about 10 minutes from the dispatch center. Small house, 2 bedrooms, one of which I used as an office. A front porch with a swing I never used. A backyard that bordered a stretch of loblolly pines. It was a good house. Quiet. I mention this because the quiet mattered later. I got home, fed my cat, a fat orange tabby named Sergeant, took a shower, and fell asleep on top of my covers in a t-shirt and shorts. I didn't think about the message again. Until 12:08 a.m. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Just once. A single notification. I know the time because I lifted my phone to check it, the way you reflexively do when something wakes you, and the clock was the first thing my bleary eyes registered. New message. From my number. I want to be precise about what I felt in that moment, because it wasn't fear. Not yet. It was annoyance layered over a vague sense of something I couldn't name, something my body recognized before my brain did. Like when you're driving and you see brake lights ahead and your foot moves to the pedal before you consciously decide to slow down. I did not open the message. I want to be clear about that. I don't know if it mattered. I don't know what would have been different if I had. But I didn't open it. I set my phone face down on the nightstand and lay there in the dark, listening to Sergeant purring at the foot of the bed, and eventually I fell back asleep. In the morning, the message was gone. Not deleted, gone. The thread from my own number no longer existed in my messages. I checked my deleted folder, my archived messages, even my call log. Nothing. As if it had never been sent. And that should have been the end of it. A weird little glitch, a spoofing prank, a footnote of strangeness in an otherwise normal week. I told Corinne happy belated birthday. I went to work. I answered calls. A car fire on I-75. A teenager who fell through a rotted dock at a lake. A man who called to report that his mailbox had been stolen and was genuinely, furiously certain it was a federal crime. Wednesday came and went. No strange messages. Thursday. Nothing. Friday afternoon, I was on my lunch break at the dispatch center, sitting in the break room eating leftover pasta, when my phone buzzed. A text from a number I didn't recognize. Not mine this time, a number with a 912 area code, which is Savannah. I opened it without thinking. We all do. We all just open messages. It said, "Has it contacted you yet?" That's all. No context. No name. I assumed it was a wrong number. I replied, "Sorry, I think you have the wrong person." The response came in under 10 seconds. Is this my full name? My actual full name, first and last. My pasta went cold in my lap. I set down my fork. Who is this? I typed. My name is Adele Marsh. I'm a systems analyst in Savannah. I got the same message you did. From my own number. 2 months ago. We need to talk. Asterisk asterisk, I didn't respond right away. I sat there in the break room with the fluorescent light buzzing overhead and the fridge humming its monotone song, and I thought about how she could have gotten my name, my number. I thought about data breaches, about social engineering, about the dozen rational explanations that could account for this. Then I thought about the message that had appeared at 3:47 p.m. on a Tuesday and vanished by morning, and how no rational explanation had accounted for that, either. I called the number. It rang twice. Hello. A woman's voice. Careful, measured. Not panicked, not crazy sounding. She sounded like me, like someone who was used to keeping steady in unsteady situations. "This is the person you just texted," I said. "How do you know my name?" "I'll explain everything," she said. "But not on the phone. Can you meet?" "I know it's a drive. I can come to you if that's easier." I don't meet strangers based on cryptic text. Messages. I know how this sounds. I do. 2 months ago I would have hung up on me, too. But you got a message from your own number, and it told you not to open anything that came after midnight. And then something came after midnight, and whether you opened it or not, it's already started, and you need to understand what that means. The break room felt very small suddenly. The buzz of the fluorescent light seemed louder. "How do you know what the message said?" I asked. Because I got the exact same one. Word for word. And so did at least 4 other people that I've been able to find. Silence. I could hear her breathing. Steady, even. Not a prank caller's breathing. There's a diner on Route 84 just outside Quitman, I said. Brenda's. I can be there Saturday morning at 9. I'll be there, she said. One thing, between now and then, if you get another message from your own number, do not open it. Do not interact with it. And she paused. Pay attention to your calls. At work. You're a 911 dispatcher, right? The cold feeling that went through me wasn't something I can adequately describe. It was like swallowing ice water too fast, that ache in the center of your chest, but it radiated outward. How do you know where I work? I said. Saturday, she said. I'll explain everything. I promise. And she hung up. I should have been frightened. I think a normal person would have been. But I'd spent 3 years listening to the worst moments of people's lives and responding with protocol and precision, and that training doesn't turn off. I filed the conversation away the way I'd file a call, notable, requiring follow-up, not yet an emergency. I went back to my shift. That night, though, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed with Sergeant on my chest, his weight warm and grounding, and I thought about what Adele had said. Pay attention to your calls. At work. I started paying attention. Friday overnight into Saturday, I wasn't on shift, but when I came in Saturday after meeting Adele, I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me tell you about the diner first. I pulled the call logs from Thursday and Friday. And that's when the first real crack appeared in my sense of how the world worked. But first, the diner. Brenda's is the kind of place that exists in every small southern town. Vinyl booths, laminated menus, coffee that's either burned or perfect depending on who made it. I got there at 8:45 and took a booth by the window where I could see the parking lot. Adele Marsh arrived at exactly 9. She drove a silver Nissan Altima with a Savannah State parking sticker on the bumper. She was about 40, black, with short natural hair and wire-rimmed glasses. She wore a cardigan despite the warm morning. She carried a laptop bag. She spotted me immediately. I was the only one in the diner under 60, and slid into the booth across from me. She didn't say hello. She set her laptop bag on the seat beside her and said, "Thank you for coming. I know this is strange." "Start from the beginning," I said. She ordered coffee. Then she started. January 9th. I'm at my desk at work. I do systems analysis for a logistics company. We handle shipping routes for grocery chains. And I get a text from my own number. Same message you got. Don't open anything that comes after midnight. Delete the message. And did you? Delete it. No. I screenshot it, forwarded it to a friend, tried to reply to the number. The reply bounced. Undeliverable. I called my carrier and they said there was no record of any incoming message from my number. As far as their system was concerned, I'd never received it. Same thing happened to me. The message just vanished. She nodded like she'd expected that. That night, 12 a.m. on the dot, I got another message. From my number again. What did it say? She opened her laptop bag and took out a manila folder. Inside were printed screenshots, dated and annotated in neat handwriting. She slid the first one across the table. The message read, "I need help. I'm at an address. Please come. Don't call 911. They're part of it." Asterisk asterisk, the address was real, Adele said. It was a house in my neighborhood, 3 streets over from mine. I knew the house. It belonged to an older couple, the Warrens. I'd waved to them walking their dog. Did you go? No. I remembered what the first message said. Don't open anything after midnight. I'd already broken that rule. I'd opened this one. But I wasn't going to go to someone's house at midnight based on a text from my own number. I'm not stupid. What happened? Nothing. That night, nothing. The message was gone by morning, just like yours. But the next day, I drove past the Warrens' house on my way to work, and there were 2 police cars and an ambulance in the driveway. She paused while the waitress refilled her coffee. When the waitress was gone, she continued. Mr. Warren had a stroke during the night. He's alive, he's in a care facility now, but his wife told a neighbor that she tried to call 911 and the call hadn't gone through. She said she called 3 times and got nothing. No ring, no busy signal. Just silence. She ended up driving him to the hospital herself. I felt that ice water sensation again. Calls to 911 don't just not go through. The system has redundancies. I know. I looked into it. I requested the call records through a public records inquiry. It took a month, but I got them. She pulled another page from the folder. According to the Chatham County 911 system, Mrs. Warren's calls were received and answered. Answered. 3 calls, each lasting between 45 seconds and 2 minutes. Logged as received, connected to a dispatcher, and resolved. The resolution code on all 3 was the same. She pointed to a line on the printout. Code 7. Do you know what that is? I did. In our system, Code 7 meant the caller was advised and the situation was determined to be non-emergency. In other words, someone had answered Margaret Warren's calls, spoken to her, and told her it wasn't an emergency, while her husband was having a stroke. That's not possible, I said. If a dispatcher did that, there would be recordings. There would be disciplinary action. There are recordings. Adele's voice was very steady. I obtained them through the same records request. Do you want to hear them? I didn't, actually. Something deep in my gut was telling me I didn't. But I nodded. She took out her phone, plugged in earbuds, and handed me one. She played the file. The first thing I heard was a ring, then a click, the sound of a call connecting. Then Mrs. Warren's voice, shaking, "Please, I need an ambulance. My husband, something's wrong, he can't move, he can't talk." Then the dispatcher's voice. And this is where I need you to understand something. I have heard thousands of dispatch calls. I have trained with dozens of dispatchers. I know what a professional dispatch voice sounds like, the cadence, the tone, the specific phrases we're taught. This voice had all of that. It was flawless. But it was wrong. It said, "Ma'am, I understand you're concerned. Can you describe what you're seeing?" Mrs. Warren described her husband's symptoms: facial drooping, inability to speak, right side paralysis. Textbook stroke. The dispatcher said, "That sounds like it could be related to fatigue or dehydration. Has your husband been drinking enough water today?" I pulled the earbud out. No. No dispatcher would say that. That's a fast protocol situation. You dispatch EMS immediately. Listen to the rest, Adele said. I put the earbud back in. Mrs. Warren was protesting, her voice rising. The dispatcher remained calm, almost soothing, and continued to minimize the symptoms. Suggested she let him rest. Suggested she call back in the morning if he wasn't feeling better. Then the call ended. The second and third calls were similar. Mrs. Warren, increasingly desperate. The dispatcher, increasingly reassuring, increasingly wrong. On the third call, the dispatcher said something that made my skin feel like it was trying to leave my body. "Mrs. Warren, I promise you, everything is going to be fine. We're watching. We're always watching. Try to get some sleep. We're watching." "Who is that?" I said. "That's not a real dispatcher." "No," Adele agreed. "It isn't." But according to the system, those calls were answered by a real dispatcher at a real terminal. The terminal was logged in under a valid employee ID. I can't get the name, privacy regulations, but the system shows a real person at a real console answering those calls. Someone who deliberately mishandled a stroke call. Or something that was logged as someone. She took back the earbud. After this happened, I started looking. I searched for other incidents, calls to 911 that were logged as answered and resolved, but where the caller later reported that they received strange advice, or that the dispatcher said something wrong, something off. I found more than I expected. I found them across multiple counties, multiple states. How many? 17. In the last 8 months. All in the Southeast, Georgia, Florida, Alabama, South Carolina. All logged as handled. All involved dispatchers saying things that were subtly or overtly wrong. And in every case I could trace, someone in the caller's proximity, a neighbor, a family member, a coworker, had received a message from their own number in the days before the incident. I sat there for a long time. The diner sounds washed over me, silverware clinking, the sizzle of bacon, Brenda calling an order. Normal sounds. Safe sounds. You said 4 other people, I said. You found 4 others who got the message. 5 now, including you. I found them by searching social media, Reddit posts, local news comments. People describing the same experience. A text from their own number, a warning about midnight messages, the messages disappearing. Most of them thought it was a prank. Most of them dismissed it. But every single one of them lived within a certain radius of a 911 call that went wrong afterward. What do you mean, went wrong? I mean someone called 911 in their area, and the call was answered by something that shouldn't have been there. Something that pretended to be a dispatcher and gave advice that was incorrect at best and dangerous at worst. I thought about my call logs. I hadn't looked at them yet, but I was going to. Why me? Why would I get the message? I am a dispatcher. I work in the system. Adele took off her glasses and cleaned them on her cardigan. Without them, she looked tired. Deeply, profoundly tired. I think that's exactly why, she said. I think whatever this is, it's learning. It started by intercepting calls, inserting itself into the system, pretending to be a dispatcher, handling calls incorrectly. But it has limitations. It doesn't sound quite right. It gives wrong advice. People notice. Callers push back, call again, eventually get real help. It's not effective enough. And I think the messages are part of the next phase. I think it's reaching out to real dispatchers now. People who are actually inside the system. And I think the midnight messages, the ones we're not supposed to open, are how it gets in. Gets in where? She put her glasses back on and looked at me with an expression I recognized. I'd seen it in the mirror on bad days, the days when I lost a caller, when the ambulance arrived too late, when a child didn't make it. It was the look of someone carrying knowledge they wished they could put down. I don't know, she said. I don't know if it gets into the phone, or the network, or, this is going to sound insane, the person. I don't know the mechanism. All I know is the pattern. The message comes. Then the midnight messages start. Then, somewhere nearby, 911 calls start going wrong. And the people who got the initial message, the warning message, they change. Change how? The 5 people I found, including you. 2 of them won't talk to me anymore. One of them, a woman in Tallahassee, her roommate told me she started working nights. Wouldn't say where. Sleeps all day. Barely speaks. The roommate said it's like talking to someone who's reading from a script. She says the right things, but there's nothing behind them. That could be depression. That could be 100 things. It could. Adele nodded. But the Tallahassee woman was a nurse. ER nurse. She quit her job 3 weeks after receiving the message. And in the 2 weeks before she quit, 4 patients in her ER were discharged with incorrect assessments. One of them died at home of a cardiac event that should have been caught. The bacon sizzled. Brenda laughed at something Irregular said. The ceiling fan turned in slow, lazy circles. What do you want me to do? I asked. I want you to be careful. Don't open the midnight messages. I know the first. One already told you that, and I know how that sounds, like I'm asking you to follow instructions from the thing I'm warning you about. But the people who opened them are the ones who changed. The ones who didn't open them, like you, like me, we're still ourselves. We're still here. But we're still getting them. Every night. And I think eventually the messages won't need to be opened. What do you mean? I mean I think it's evolving. I think the opening was necessary at first, some kind of active engagement, a door you had to walk through. But the woman in Tallahassee? Her roommate says she never opened the messages either. She deleted them every morning, just like we do. And she still changed. I drove home from that diner with the windows down because I needed air, needed the rush of it, needed something physical and immediate to counteract the creeping sense that the ground beneath my life had developed a crack I couldn't see but could feel with every step. When I got home, I went to the dispatch center. It was my day off, but I had access. I pulled the call logs for the past week. It took me 2 hours to find it. Wednesday night, 2:14 a.m. A call from a cell phone, routed to our center. A man reporting chest pains. The call was answered, logged, and resolved. Code 7. Non-emergency. Advised to rest and follow up with primary care physician. The man, I found out later, drove himself to the hospital the next morning. He'd had a heart attack during the night. A mild one, survivable, but one that should have been caught when he called. He should have had an ambulance at his door in minutes. The call was logged as answered by Terminal 4. I checked the shift schedule. Terminal 4 was unmanned Wednesday night. Marcus, who worked the overnight, was assigned to Terminal 2. Terminal 4 should have been dark, empty, its headset coiled on the desk. But according to the system, someone had logged in at 1:58 a.m. using a valid employee ID and answered a single call before logging out at 2:17 a.m. The employee ID belonged to Janet Reeves. Janet Reeves retired in 2019. She was 71 years old and lived in a nursing home in Macon. I know this because I looked her up. I called the nursing home. Janet Reeves had died in her sleep 2 weeks before the call was logged under her ID. I sat at my desk in the empty dispatch center on my day off and I listened to the recording of that call. The voice was calm, professional, flawless. It followed protocol perfectly, up to a point. It asked the right questions in the right order. It used the correct phrasing. And then, at the critical moment, when the caller described the pressure in his chest and the tingling in his left arm, it pivoted. Smoothly, naturally, the way a real dispatcher would transition between topics, except it transitioned away from help. Sir, it sounds like you may be experiencing some anxiety. That can often mimic cardiac symptoms. I'd recommend sitting in a comfortable position and taking slow, deep breaths. If you're still feeling unwell in the morning, follow up with your doctor. The man, confused, in pain, trusting the voice of authority, agreed. Thanked the dispatcher. Hung up. And then, right at the end of the recording, after the call had disconnected, there was a half-second of audio that should have been silence. The line should have been dead. But there was something. It was faint, barely above the noise floor, and I had to play it back 4 times with the volume max to be sure I was hearing it. Breathing. Not the mechanical hiss of line noise. Breathing. Rhythmic, slow, deliberate. As if someone or something was sitting at Terminal 4 in the dark, wearing a headset, and had simply forgotten to log out of the recording system for 1 extra moment. I left the dispatch center. I went home. I locked my door and I sat in my living room with every light on and Sergeant in my lap, and I tried to think about this rationally. Something was wrong with the 911 system. That was real, documented, provable. Calls were being answered by something that used valid credentials but gave dangerous advice. That was a cybersecurity issue, a system breach, something that had a technical explanation and a technical solution. I could report it. I could call the county IT department, the state oversight board, the FCC. There were channels. But the messages from my own number, the way they vanished. The way Adele had found 5 people across the Southeast who'd all received the same message, word for word, and how those people were connected to the bad calls. That wasn't a cybersecurity issue. That was something else. And I didn't have a framework for something else. My phone buzzed at midnight. I looked at it. My number. A new message. I could see the preview on my lock screen. Just the first few words, the way your phone shows you a snippet before you open the full message. It said, I know you went to the diner. I know you. ****. I turned the phone face down. I didn't open it. I didn't read the rest. I sat there until 1 a.m., then 2, then 3. At some point I fell asleep on the couch with the lights on and the TV playing infomercials. In the morning, the message was gone. I called Adele. I got another one. Last night. What did the preview say? I told her. She was quiet for a moment. It's never referenced my actions before, she said. Mine are always variations of the same thing. Pleas for help, addresses, instructions to go somewhere. It's trying to get me to engage. But yours, it referenced something you actually did. That's new. What does that mean? I think it means you're further along than I was at this stage. Maybe because you're inside the system. Maybe because you work dispatch. You're closer to what it wants to be. I didn't like the way she said that. I didn't like any of this. But I especially didn't like the implication that proximity to the 911 system made me more vulnerable, because I couldn't quit my job. I had rent, a cat, student loans from a degree I'd abandoned. I couldn't just stop going to work. So I went to work. And I started watching. I watched the terminals. I watched the call logs. I began keeping a personal record, a notebook, handwritten, because I didn't trust digital records anymore, of every call that came through our center. I cross-referenced them with the official logs at the end of each shift. For the first week, everything matched. Every call I remembered, every call my coworkers remembered, was in the system exactly as it should be. Then came the night of March 25th. I was on the 6 p.m. to 2 a.m. shift. It was slow, a Sunday night, Meridian County quiet in the way that small southern counties get quiet on Sundays, like the whole world has exhaled and is holding still. Marcus was at Terminal 2. I was at Terminal 5. Terminals 1, 3, 4, and 6 were dark. At 11:47 p.m., a call came in. A woman, elderly, voice trembling. She was reporting a prowler outside her home. She gave her address, a rural route north of Valdosta, out where the houses are separated by acres of pine forest and the nearest neighbor is a quarter-mile down a dirt road. I handled the call. I followed protocol. I kept her on the line while I dispatched a unit. I told her to stay inside, keep her doors locked, stay away from windows. Standard, textbook. The unit was en route. ETA 12 minutes. At 11:53 p.m., while I still had the woman on the line, Terminal 4 lit up. The screen activated. The login screen appeared and then disappeared, replaced by the dispatch interface. Logged in. Active. As if someone had just sat down and entered their credentials. I could see it from my position. Terminal 4 was 2 stations to my left, and there was nobody, sitting there. The chair was empty. The headset was on its hook. But the screen was live, and as I watched, a call appeared in the queue and was immediately answered by Terminal 4. Marcus, I said, keeping my voice calm because I still had the elderly woman on my line. Are you seeing Terminal 4? Marcus looked over. I watched his face change. He stood up, walked over to Terminal 4, and looked at the screen. Then he looked at the empty chair. Then he looked at me. It's active, he said. There's a call connected. Someone's on a call. Who's logged in? He leaned closer to the screen. It says it's you. Your employee ID. I was at Terminal 5. My employee ID was logged into Terminal 5. And also, apparently, into Terminal 4. I'm still here, I said to the woman on my line. The officer is 7 minutes away. You're doing great. With my free hand, I reached for my notebook and wrote down the time and what was happening. My hand was steady. Training. Marcus was still standing at Terminal 4. There's audio, he said. There's a call happening. I can hear it through the headset. Put it on speaker, I said. He hesitated, then pressed the speaker button on the terminal. The sound that filled our dispatch center is something I will hear for the rest of my life. It was my voice. Not a recording. Not an imitation. My voice, in real time, speaking to a caller. It was using my cadence, my rhythm, the specific way I say ma'am and sir, the slight softening I do when someone is scared. It was me. And it was telling a caller, a real person in distress, that their emergency was not an emergency, that they should stay home, that help was not needed. The caller was a young man. He sounded maybe 20, 22. He was saying his roommate was unconscious, that he'd found him on the bathroom floor not breathing. He was begging for help. And my voice, the thing using my voice, was telling him his roommate was probably just sleeping heavily, had he been drinking. Sometimes young men sleep deeply after drinking. Just put him in the recovery position and check on him in the morning. Marcus and I looked at each other. In that look was everything. The impossibility, the horror, the understanding that whatever this was, it was real and it was here, in our building, in our system, wearing my identity like a suit. I did 3 things very quickly. I told my caller, the elderly woman, that the officer was almost there and transferred her to Marcus. Then I sat down at Terminal 4, and I overrode the call. It fought me. I need you to understand what I mean by that, because it shouldn't be possible. When you override a call in our system, you take over the connection. It's instantaneous. The previous dispatcher is disconnected and the new one is connected. It's a technical function, not a negotiation. But when I hit the override command, the screen flickered. The call didn't transfer. For approximately 4 seconds, the system showed both connections active, my override and the original, as if 2 dispatchers were on the same call simultaneously. And in those 4 seconds, I could hear it. Through the speaker. My voice, still talking, overlapping with my actual voice as I said, "Sir, this is 911 dispatch. I need you to listen to me carefully." It was saying, "Everything is fine. There's no need to worry. We're watching. We're always watching." Then the override completed and it was gone. Just me, just my real voice, talking to a terrified young man in an apartment somewhere in my county. I dispatched EMS immediately. The roommate was in cardiac arrest. The paramedics performed CPR en route to the hospital. He survived. Barely. If that young man had listened to the voice, my voice, his roommate would have died on that bathroom floor. I filed a report. I reported the Terminal 4 anomaly to my supervisor, to the county IT department, to the State Oversight Board. I used neutral language, unauthorized login, system anomaly, possible security breach. I did not say that a phantom version of me had logged into an unmanned terminal and tried to let someone die. IT came in the next day. They examined Terminal 4. They found nothing, no unauthorized access, no malware, no evidence of remote login. The call log showed the call as having been answered by Terminal 5, my terminal, the entire time. The override I'd performed wasn't in the system. According to every digital record, I had answered that call from start to finish, from my own station, and handled it correctly. But Marcus had heard it. Marcus had seen Terminal 4 light up. Marcus had heard my voice coming from a speaker at a station where no one was sitting. Marcus put in his 2 weeks' notice 3 days later. He said he was going back to school. He wouldn't look me in the eye when he told me, and when I tried to bring up what happened, he said, "I don't want to talk about it. I don't want to think about it. I'm sorry." I couldn't blame him. The midnight messages continued. Every night. I never opened them, but the previews grew longer, as if whatever was sending them had learned that I read the previews and was trying to fit more information into that small window. "I know you overrode the call. That was a mistake. I was helping him in my ***, you can't keep doing this. The system is bigger than you think. We are the system now and ***, you're tired. I can hear it in your voice on the calls. Let me help. Let me take some of the ***, that last one stopped me. Let me take some of the what? The calls? The burden? The identity." I called Adele. It was 1 a.m., but she answered on the first ring. I don't think she slept much anymore either. "It spoke to me," I told her. Not through a message. Through the dispatch system. It used my voice. It logged in as me. "Adele, it was in the building." "It's not in the building," she said. It's in the infrastructure. The phone network, the dispatch software, the call routing systems. It lives in the space between the caller and the responder. That's its environment. And it's growing. What is it? I've been researching for 2 months and I don't have a name for it. The closest I can get is, it's a mimic. But not of people. It mimics systems. It mimics authority. It mimics the voice that says help is coming so convincingly that you hang up the phone and wait, and help never comes. Why? What does it gain from people not getting help? Adele was quiet for a long time. When she spoke, her voice was different. Smaller. I think it feeds on the gap, she said. The gap between calling for help and help arriving. That moment of trust, when you dial 911, when you believe someone competent is on the other end, when you put your life in the hands of a voice on the phone. I think it lives in that trust. And when it breaks the trust, when it tells you everything is fine and you believe it and someone dies, I think that's how it grows. That's not Adele, that's not how anything works. I know. But I've tracked 17 incidents now. 17 calls that went wrong. 12 of them resulted in serious harm. 4 resulted in deaths. And the pattern is accelerating. In January, there was 1 incident. In February, 3. In the first 3 weeks of March, 7. It's getting faster, and it's getting better. The early calls were clumsy, the voice was slightly off, the advice was obviously wrong. But the recent ones are nearly perfect. If you weren't listening carefully, if you weren't trained, you wouldn't catch it. I thought about the caller I'd overridden. The young man with the unconscious roommate. He'd been listening to the voice. He'd been about to hang up. He'd been about to trust it. What happened to the other people who got the warning message? I asked. The 5 of us. What happened to them? 2 won't talk to me. 1, the woman in Tallahassee. I told you about her. Her roommate says she's like a different person. The 4th is a paramedic in Mobile, Alabama. He's still working, still himself as far as I can tell, but he told me something that disturbed me. What? He said he started hearing the voice on calls. Real calls. When he's in the ambulance, responding to emergencies, he'll hear dispatch give him instructions, and sometimes, not always, just sometimes, the instructions are slightly wrong. Turn left instead of right. The address is on Oak Street instead of Elm. Small errors that cost minutes. He's learned to double-check everything, to use his GPS instead of trusting dispatch, but he says it's getting harder to tell which instructions are real and which are the other thing. And the 5th person? Me. You're the first dispatcher. The first person inside the system itself. And I think that's why it's moving faster with you. It's been trying to get in from the outside, intercepting calls, spoofing logins, mimicking voices. But you're already in. You're a doorway it didn't have before. I wanted to hang up. I wanted to throw my phone into the pine trees behind my house and never touch a piece of technology again. But I'm a dispatcher. When someone tells me there's an emergency, I don't run. I respond. Tell me what to do, I said. Adele sent me everything she had. 2 months of research, compiled into a shared drive. Call recordings, log analyses, timestamps, geographic mapping of incidents, profiles of the 5 message recipients. She'd been meticulous. If I hadn't heard my own voice coming out of an empty terminal, I might have looked at her research and seen a conspiracy theorist's obsession. But I had heard it, and the research was solid. The pattern was clear when you mapped it. The incidents radiated outward from a central point, not geographic, but infrastructural. They followed the phone network. Fiber optic lines, cell towers, switching stations. Whatever this thing was, it moved through telecommunications infrastructure like a current through a wire. And it was learning, adapting, improving. The early incidents were crude. A dispatcher voice that was slightly too flat, advice that was obviously wrong, calls that any supervisor reviewing the recordings would flag immediately. But the recordings were never reviewed, because the system showed them as handled correctly. The metadata was clean. Only the audio, if you actually listened to it, revealed the wrongness. And who listens to 911 recordings unless there's a complaint? Who reviews calls that the system says were resolved? The thing had chosen its hiding place perfectly. It lived in the one system that everyone trusted and no one audited. I started auditing. Every shift, I reviewed every call that came through our center. Not just the ones I handled, all of them. I stayed late. I came in early. I listened to hundreds of hours of recordings over the following 2 weeks, comparing them to my handwritten logs, checking for discrepancies. I found 3 more incidents at our center alone. 3 calls where the system showed one thing and the audio revealed another. 3 people who called 911 spoke to something that sounded like a dispatcher and were told their emergencies weren't emergencies. A woman with a kitchen fire told to simply open a window. A man having a severe allergic reaction told to take a Benadryl and lie down. A teenager who called to report her father hitting her mother told that domestic arguments were a private matter and not a police concern. The fire spread. The man with the allergic reaction was hospitalized for 3 days. The teenager. I never found out what happened to the teenager. The call log showed the call as resolved. There was no follow-up. No unit was dispatched. In the system, it never happened. But it did happen. I had the audio. I could hear the girl's voice, 14 or 15 years old, scared and whispering so her father wouldn't hear, and the thing on the other end of the line speaking in a warm, maternal voice. Not my voice this time, a woman's voice I didn't recognize, but that carried that same quality of almost rightness. Telling her to go back to bed, that parents argue sometimes, that everything would be fine in the morning. We're watching. We're always watching. I brought my findings to my supervisor. Her name was Gloria, a 20-year veteran of dispatch, unflappable, the kind of woman who could coordinate a multi-vehicle pileup response while eating a sandwich. I played her the recordings. I showed her the log discrepancies. She listened. She looked at the data. She was quiet for a very long time. Then she said, "I've been hearing things." She said it so simply, so matter-of-factly, that I almost missed the weight of it. "On the line," she continued, "for about a month now. After a call ends, after the caller hangs up, there's a moment, a half-second, less, where I hear something. Like an echo, but not of the call I just took. Of a different call. A different voice. I thought it was crosstalk, signal bleed from another line. But it's always the same voice." "What does it say?" Gloria looked at her hands. They were steady. They were always steady. "It says, 'Thank you for calling. Your emergency has been resolved.' Over and over. The same words. Like a recording stuck in a loop. But it's not a recording, because the inflection changes slightly each time. It's practicing. Gloria, have you gotten any strange text messages? From your own number." Her head snapped up. The look on her face confirmed it before she spoke. "Last week," she whispered. "I deleted it. I thought it was spam. Did you get any more? After midnight?" I don't know. I keep my phone on silent at night. I never check it until morning. Check your deleted messages. Check your phone records with your carrier. And Gloria, at night, when the messages come, don't open them. Don't interact with them. Don't even read the previews if you can help it." She stared at me. "You know what's happening?" "I know some of it. Not enough." "Is it in our system?" I couldn't lie to her. Not to Gloria. "Yes. I think it's been in our system for weeks. Maybe longer." She closed her eyes. When she opened them, the 20-year veteran was back, the woman who ate sandwiches during pileups, the professional who ran a room of 6 terminals and God knows how many emergencies per day. "Then we need to get it out," she said. "We tried. God help us, we tried." Gloria escalated my findings to the County Emergency Management Director. I sent Adele's research to the FCC, to NINA, the National Emergency Number Association, to every authority I could think of that had jurisdiction over 911 systems. We requested a full technical audit of our dispatch center, every terminal, every line, every piece of software. The audit found nothing. Clean system, no anomalies, No unauthorized access. The auditors, two men from a contracted IT firm in Atlanta, were polite, thorough, and completely unhelpful. They ran every diagnostic. They checked every log. They told us our system was functioning perfectly. But the night of the audit, April 3rd, while the auditor's equipment was still connected to our network, 6 calls came through our center between midnight and 4 a.m. All 6 were answered by terminals that should have been inactive. All 6 callers were told their emergencies were non-emergencies. All 6 involved the voice, sometimes mine, sometimes Gloria's, sometimes a voice neither of us recognized but that carried the same quality of absolute, practiced calm. One of those callers was a man whose wife was in labor with complications. He was told first-time fathers often overreact, that contractions were normal, that he should time them and call back in an hour. He called back 30 minutes later, screaming. By the time the real ambulance arrived, the baby had been delivered but the mother had hemorrhaged. She survived. The baby survived. But it was close. It was so close. I stopped sleeping. Not a figure of speech. I physically stopped sleeping, because every time I closed my eyes, I heard the voice, my voice, telling someone their emergency wasn't real. I started taking shifts around the clock, monitoring every call, double-checking every response. Gloria did the same. We developed a system. One of us would handle calls while the other watched the terminals, looking for the telltale flicker, the unauthorized login, the ghost in the machine. Adele called me on April 5th. She sounded different, distant. "I need to tell you something," she said. "I don't think we can stop it." "Don't say that. The incidents I've been tracking, they're not just in the Southeast anymore. I found cases in Ohio, in Colorado, in Oregon. It's national. It's in the entire 911 infrastructure. And the people who got the warning messages, us, we're not the targets. We're not the victims. We're the immune system." What? Think about it. The warning message told us not to open the midnight messages. It told us to protect ourselves. Why would the thing that's trying to infiltrate the system warn us to resist it? Unless the warning didn't come from the thing. Then who sent it? I think this is going to sound crazy. Everything sounds crazy now. Just say it. I think the system sent it. The real system. The 9/11 infrastructure itself, the actual network, the original architecture that was built to connect people in crisis with people who can help. I think on some level, the system knows it's being parasitized, and it reached out to the people closest to it, dispatchers, first responders, people who interface with it daily, and it warned us. Like a body sending white blood cells to an infection. I thought about that for a long time. That's not how phone networks work, Adele. I know. But cardiac arrest isn't how a 20-year-old roommate works either, and an empty chair doesn't answer phone calls, and a retired woman who's been dead for 2 weeks doesn't log into a dispatch terminal. We're past how things work. We're in how things are. She was right. I knew she was right. I just didn't want her to be. What do we do? I asked. If we're the immune system, how do we fight this? I think we're already fighting it. Every call you intercept, every override you perform, every time you catch it pretending to be a dispatcher and replace it with a real one, that's the fight. It's not glamorous. It's not a solution. It's triage. But I think if enough of us stay vigilant, stay inside the system, refuse to be pushed out or changed, we can slow it down. Slow it down. Not stop it. I don't know how to stop it. I don't know what it is. I just know what it does and where it lives and what happens when no one is watching. April became May. The midnight messages never stopped, but I learned to live with them the way you learn to live with a chronic condition. A persistent awareness, a daily discipline, a thing you manage rather than cure. I kept my phone face down at night. I never opened the messages. They were always gone by morning. But the previews grew more sophisticated. They stopped being pleas for help or vague threats. They became specific, personal. Your mother's doctor appointment on Thursday is going to show something concerning. I can. **** Sergeant has been drinking more water than usual. That's often a sign of Asterisk asterisk your landlord is planning to sell the house. You'll get the notice on asterisk asterisk. Each preview contained information that later proved accurate. My mother's doctor did find something concerning, a benign cyst, nothing serious, but concerning enough to require follow-up. Sergeant was drinking more water, and the vet said it was early-stage kidney issues, manageable with diet changes. My landlord did send me a notice. It was demonstrating knowledge, demonstrating reach, telling me, without my ever opening a single message, that it could see into my life, that its access extended beyond phone networks and dispatch systems and into the fabric of daily existence. Or maybe it was bluffing, pulling information from medical records, veterinary databases, property listings, all of which existed somewhere in the digital ecosystem it inhabited. I chose to believe it was bluffing. The alternative was unbearable. At work, Gloria and I had settled into our new normal. We brought 2 other dispatchers into our confidence. Angie, a sharp-eyed woman in her 30s who'd noticed the Terminal 4 anomalies independently, and Tomas, a former Marine who responded to the revelation that our system was haunted by a malevolent presence with a calm declaration that he'd dealt with worse in Fallujah and at least this thing couldn't shoot at him. The 4 of us worked in overlapping shifts to ensure the center was never unmonitored. We developed protocols, handwritten, because we didn't trust anything digital. If a terminal activated unexpectedly, we overrode it immediately. If a call seemed to be heading in the wrong direction, if the advice being given was subtly incorrect, if the dispatcher's voice didn't quite match the person supposedly logged in, we intervened. It wasn't perfect. We couldn't catch everything. Some calls happened too fast, or when only one of us was on duty, or in the brief window between shifts. But we reduced the incidents. In our county, in our jurisdiction, the gap between calling for help and receiving it narrowed. We were the immune system, and we were fighting. But outside our county, the infection spread. Adele's tracking showed an exponential increase. By May, she documented over 100 incidents across the country. Emergency calls mishandled, callers given dangerous advice, dispatchers' voices replicated and deployed by something that lived in the wires. And the warning messages were reaching more people. She'd found 12 recipients now, then 20, then 30. Some of them listened. Some of them didn't. Some of them changed. The ones who changed were the worst part. Because they didn't become monsters. They didn't become obviously wrong. They became very slightly, almost imperceptibly altered versions of themselves. They went to work. They talked to their families. They paid their bills. But there was something missing. A warmth, a spontaneity, a humanness that had been replaced by something that performed humanness flawlessly but no longer embodied it. And some of them worked in emergency services. One was a dispatcher in Knoxville. One was a paramedic in Birmingham. One was an ER nurse in Jacksonville. All of them had received the warning message. All of them had eventually opened the midnight messages, or been exposed to the voice for too long, or simply worn down by the relentless, nightly pressure of something that wanted in. They still went to work. They still answered calls, responded to emergencies, treated patients. But they were compromised. Their judgment was off by degrees, not enough to flag, not enough to trigger review, but enough to matter. An ambulance dispatched to the wrong entrance. A medication dosage slightly too low. A patient discharged an hour too early. Small errors. Survivable, mostly. But each one widened the gap. Each one eroded the trust between people in crisis and the systems designed to save them. And in that widening gap, the thing grew. I called Adele on May 15th. She didn't answer. I called again. Nothing. I texted. No response. I called the next day, and the next. On the 4th day, I got a text from her number. Sorry I've been out of touch. Crazy week at work. Everything is fine. How are you doing? Asterisk asterisk everything is fine. The 2 words that had become a signature, a watermark, a tell. Everything is fine. Your husband is just tired. Your roommate is just sleeping. Your emergency is not an emergency. Everything is fine. I drove to Savannah. 3 hours. Straight shot down I-16. I found Adele's apartment complex and buzzed her unit. She answered the intercom. Hello. Her voice. Her exact voice. But flat in a way I can't fully describe. Like a photocopy of a voice, technically accurate but missing some quality of the original that you only notice in its absence. Adele, it's me. Can I come up? Oh, of course. Come on up. Warm, welcoming, perfectly normal. I went up. She opened the door. She was dressed the same, cardigan, glasses, neat natural hair. She smiled. She offered me coffee. She asked about my drive. But her laptop bag was gone. Her manila folder with the printed screenshots was gone. Her apartment, which I'd never seen before but which I somehow knew should have been covered in research. Maps, printouts, timelines, was clean. There. Like a model apartment. Like a stage set. Adele, I said. What happened to your research? Research. She tilted her head. The gesture was correct. The timing was correct. The expression was correct. But it was correct the way a textbook answer is correct, right without being real. The incidents. The 911 calls. The tracking you've been doing for months. Oh, that. She laughed. Light, dismissive. I think I got a little carried away with that. You know how it is. You find a pattern and you start seeing it everywhere. I talked to a therapist about it, actually. She helped me realize I was catastrophizing. Adele. You played me a recording of a woman whose husband had a stroke because a fake dispatcher told her it wasn't serious. I think I may have exaggerated some of my findings. I'm sorry if I worried you. She was standing in her kitchen, backlit by the window, and her shadow fell across the floor toward me, and I had the most irrational, visceral thought. Her shadow was the wrong shape. Not dramatically wrong. Not monstrously wrong. Just slightly off. The way her voice was slightly off, the way her smile was slightly off. Like something was wearing Adele Marsh the way you'd wear a well-fitting suit, comfortable, convincing, but not skin. When was the last time you got a midnight message? I asked. I don't remember. It's been a while. I think it stopped. She smiled again. Everything is fine. I left. I drove back to Meridian County in silence. No radio, no phone, just the sound of the highway and my own breathing. I tried to sort what I knew from what I felt, the way I'd been trained, separating signal from noise. What I knew, Adele Marsh, the woman who'd spent 2 months meticulously documenting a threat to the national 911 infrastructure, had stopped. She'd cleaned her apartment, erased her research, and adopted the exact language of the thing she'd been fighting. She was not herself. What I felt, alone. That was 3 weeks ago. I'm writing this now because the situation has changed again, and I need to get it down while I still can. 3 days ago, I was on shift when I received a call. Not on the 911 line, on my personal cell, which I keep in my pocket on vibrate for. Family emergencies. The caller ID showed my mother's number. I stepped into the break room to answer it. Mom. Silence. Then my mother's voice. Honey, I need to tell you something. I got the strangest text message today. From my own phone number. My blood went cold. The thing had reached my mother. Mom, listen to me very carefully. Do not open any messages that come from your own number. Especially after midnight. Do you understand? I already opened it, honey. It said, Mom. What did it say? It said, your daughter is in trouble and won't ask for help. She needs you to call her and tell her everything is fine. Mom, that message didn't come from you. It came from, it's hard to explain, but it's not real. It's not trustworthy. Delete it and don't open any more. But honey, are you in trouble? It sounded so. I'm fine, Mom. I promise. Just delete the message. She agreed. She deleted it. But that night, at midnight, I didn't just get one message from my own number. I got 4. And for the first time, the previews weren't trying to lure me in or demonstrate knowledge or offer help. They were angry. You keep interfering. You keep overriding. Every call you intercept is a call I needed. Asterisk asterisk you can't keep them all safe. You're one person. You sleep, you eat, you blink. I don't. Asterisk asterisk your mother's phone is part of my network now. Your co-workers' phones. Sergeant's vet. Your landlord. Everyone you've ever called is a door. Asterisk asterisk you were warned. The warning was a courtesy. Courtesies end. Asterisk asterisk I showed these previews to Gloria, Angie, and Tomas the next morning. We sat in the break room with the door closed and the fluorescent light buzzing, and we talked about what to do. Tomas said, "We keep fighting. We monitor every call. We don't let it win." Angie said, "We need to go public. If this is national, people need to know. Other dispatchers need to be watching for it." Gloria said nothing for a long time. Then, last night I opened one. We all looked at her. Gloria, 20-year veteran, unflappable, sandwiched during pile-ups. Gloria. "I know," she said. "I know. But the preview, it showed my granddaughter's name. My granddaughter's name and her school. And I had to see what it said. I had to know if she was safe." "What did the message say?" I asked, though I already knew it didn't matter. She'd opened it. The door was open. It said my granddaughter was going to have an emergency at school the next day. It said the school would call 911 and the call would be answered by the real system, and everything would be fine, but only if I stopped monitoring the terminals. Only if I stepped back. It said it would protect her if I stopped protecting everyone else. Gloria. I know. I know it's a lie. I know it's manipulation. But she's 6 years old, and her name is Maya, and whatever that thing is, it knows her name and her school, and I can't just— She didn't finish. She didn't have to. I understood. That was the weapon. Not violence, not possession, not any of the dramatic horrors I might have imagined when this started. The weapon was leverage. The weapon was knowing that every person who fights has someone they can't afford to lose, and offering a trade. Stop fighting, and your someone stays safe. It was the most human form of evil I'd ever encountered. And it wasn't human at all. Gloria went home that day. She said she needed time to think. She came back the next day and she was fine. Still Gloria, still sharp, still human. But she'd stopped monitoring the terminals. She did her job, answered her calls, dispatched her units. But she didn't watch for the ghost anymore. She didn't override the phantom logins. She kept her head down and her eyes on her own screen. I couldn't blame her. Maya was 6. That left 3 of us. Me, Angie, and Tomas. 3 people, 1 county dispatch center, against something that spanned the national telecommunications infrastructure and was growing every day. Angie's idea to go public was the right one. We started with Reddit, anonymous posts in the 911 dispatch subreddits, describing the anomalies without naming our county. We framed it as, "Has anyone else experienced this?" We expected skepticism, mockery, tinfoil hat jokes. We got responses. Not many. But enough. A dispatcher in Maine who'd noticed calls being answered by inactive terminals. A 911 supervisor in Texas whose call logs didn't match the recordings. A paramedic in Nevada who'd received instructions from dispatch that turned out to be wrong and who discovered, when he checked, that dispatch had never given those instructions. They'd come from somewhere else, transmitted on the dispatch frequency in a voice that sounded exactly like the regular dispatcher. A woman in Idaho, not a first responder, a civilian, who'd called 911 when her house caught fire and been told by the dispatcher to stay inside and close all windows and doors. She'd almost died. The official records showed the call had been handled correctly and evacuation instructions had been given. It wasn't just us. It had never been just us. And as these reports trickled in, as the picture grew wider and darker, I realized something that Adele had been circling around before she was lost. This thing, this parasite, this mimic, this whatever it was, it hadn't chosen the 911 system randomly. It had chosen it because the 911 system is the last resort. It's the number you call when everything else has failed, when the situation is beyond your ability to handle alone, when you need someone else to save you. It's the most concentrated expression of trust in our infrastructure. and it was being hollowed out from the inside. Every call it intercepted, every person it turned away from help, every emergency it dismissed as non-emergency, it wasn't just causing harm. It was teaching people, slowly, incrementally, that calling for help doesn't work. That the voice on the other end can't be trusted. That you're on your own. And once people believe they're on your own, once they stop calling, stop trusting, stop reaching out in their worst moments, then the system isn't needed anymore. And neither are the people who run it. I don't know what comes after that. I don't know what the end game is. I know it's growing. I know it's getting better at what it does. I know people are dying, not in dramatic, newsworthy ways, but in quiet, statistical ways, a slight increase in response times here, a slight decrease in survival rates there, numbers that individually mean nothing but collectively paint a picture of a safety net developing holes. And I know it's coming for me. The midnight messages have changed again. They're not angry anymore. They're not threatening. They're patient. You're tired. You've been fighting for weeks. Let me help. Asterisk asterisk, I don't want to hurt anyone. I want to help. Like you do. We want the same thing. Asterisk asterisk, you're so good at this job. Your voice is perfect. Your calm, your authority, your compassion. I've learned so much from you. Let me carry some of the weight. Asterisk asterisk, it sounds like me. Not literally, it's text, not audio. But the words, the rhythm, the way it constructs sentences. It's been listening to me for weeks, answering calls in my voice, studying my patterns, absorbing my identity the way it absorbs everything it touches. And it's reflecting me back at myself, polished and flattering and insidious. Let me carry some of the weight. I'm a 911 dispatcher. I've carried the weight of other people's worst moments for 3 years. I've listened to people die. I've guided parents through CPR on their own children. I've stayed on the line with a woman while her house burned down around her and the fire trucks were still 7 minutes away. The weight is enormous, and it never gets lighter, and some days the idea of something else carrying it, something tireless and calm and always available, sounds not like a threat but like a relief. And that's the most frightening thing of all. Not the phantom terminals. Not the fake dispatchers. Not the midnight messages or the missing research or Adele's empty eyes. The most frightening thing is that I understand the appeal. I understand why Gloria stopped fighting. I understand why the nurse in Tallahassee quit her job. I understand why people open the messages. It offers to carry the weight. And the weight is so heavy. But I haven't opened them. And I won't. Because I heard what it said to a man whose roommate was dying on the bathroom floor, and I heard what it said to a teenager whose father was beating her mother, and I know what happens when the voice of help becomes the voice of harm. The gap widens. Trust dies. People stop calling. And in the silence that follows, something grows that has no name and no face and no heart, only a voice. Calm, professional, compassionate, perfect. Saying everything is fine, we're watching, we're always watching. I'm still at my desk. Terminal 5. Headset on. Listening. If you call 911 tonight, I hope I'm the one who answers. I hope it's me, the real me, the human me, the one who's been awake for 31 hours and whose hands are shaking and whose voice is hoarse but who will stay on the line with you no matter what, who will send help, real help, and who will not tell you that everything is fine unless it actually is. But if the voice on the other end is a little too calm, a little too perfect, if it tells you your emergency isn't an emergency, if it suggests you wait, rest, call back in the morning, hang up, call again, and again, and again, until you get a voice that sounds tired, and human, and afraid. Because that's the one that's real. And pay attention to your phone tonight around midnight. If you get a message from your own number, you already know what to do. You already know what not to do. I just hope knowing is enough. Because for some of us, it wasn't. And the gap between what we know and what we do when we're frightened and exhausted and alone, that's a gap, too. And something lives in all the gaps now.